If we think about the number of cameras that there are, 99.9% of them are dumb as hell. Whilst you can find out what people are clicking on, what people are buying on Amazon, let's not forget that more commerce happens offline than online, yet we have almost no information about what's going on offline. We are digitizing information in the real world. We're doing that through hardware that we've developed.
How much better is the quality of data that you guys output?
Exactly accurate is revolutionary. Information on the exact number of cars, the exact make and model, the exact speed, the exact number of occupants. And these data sets are often powering massive decisions.
Who actually uses this data?
McDonald's and Walmart and Shell. And this information is then stored in perpetuity. So we have both real-time insights into what's happening on that street at that time, but also we know what's been happening last week, last month, last year.
I think the AI definitely plays an extremely strong role.
It's that AI that is converting what would otherwise just be 6 high-definition video streams into actionable information.
Unlike anything I've heard of.
Our ambition is to build.
Welcome to We Are DePIN, a podcast focused on the world of DePIN projects. Each episode, we invite projects to discuss how they are revolutionizing the world of DePIN and Web3. Our goal is to keep you informed about everything happening in the DePIN space through insightful discussions. This podcast is brought to you by Minima, the embedded blockchain. Minima is a fully decentralized layer 1 blockchain that can embed and run a full node on edge devices. Minima is not just another blockchain. It's a fundamental shift in how decentralized networks can operate. Its lightweight architecture allows it to run a full node on chip on any mobile or IoT device, making it exceptionally adaptable to scaling any decentralized physical infrastructure networks. Minima's technology is now being supported by an expansive and engaged community of over 50,000 node operators. So join us for this next insightful discussion and enjoy the episode. Harry, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very, very well, thanks. It's a pleasure to have you on the We Are DePIN podcast. We had you on the Twitter space a couple of weeks ago. Very, very fun. How did you find that?
Yeah, no, it was a really good group of people. I mean, obviously we were talking quite a lot about healthcare, which is not necessarily my area of focus, but certainly interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, and that's the thing about, I guess, Edge AI, DePIN, DPay. I haven't seen an aspect of Web3 that really is as overarching as DePIN, that really impacts as many industries as DePIN. Obviously, you have DeFi, which does impact sort of payments and banking and things like that. But with something like DePIN, it really does impact everything across almost every industry.
Yeah, no, I mean, it has the opportunity to disrupt and impact, everything from your coffee machine to your energy bill, to your cellular device, to your car. So, the possibilities are really endless. And I think we're really only at the very beginning of what is a huge movement, which will impact everyone. I mean, today it's really only the people that are in the space building the space, but eventually people at large will be involved in this, whether they know it or not. And I think it's likely to be more the latter, that they won't necessarily know that they're, operating or contributing to a DePIN network. It will just be kind of the norm.
Yeah, and you're already seeing that with lower and lower friction points when it comes to interacting with DePINs. Before it was, you had to install a node on your phone or desktop, whereas now it's like Google Chrome extensions, and even maybe a step before that is embedding onto chips, which is what Minima is doing. So there's so many. It's it's becoming very low friction, and you're right. Like, it does unlock a lot of users. But I'm interested, Harry, how did your journey into DePIN Edge AI begin?
Sure. So I've been an entrepreneur my whole career. Sold my first company when I was 23. Ended up moving to Silicon Valley, and then sold another business in Singapore, which moved me out to there. Those businesses were in the data and analytics space, so understanding consumer behaviors, using digital data to understand primarily what they were doing in the real world. So location information, intelligence to predict what people are more likely to do. Our biggest customers were businesses like McDonald's and Walmart and Shell and so on, who obviously have large footprints of real estate and retail locations, and this information was incredibly valuable to them. So I started and sold a number of businesses in that sphere, one to Singtel, and then another one more recently to T-Mobile. I then went on to be CEO, a bit of a departure from entrepreneurialism, but interesting nonetheless. I went to be CEO at Linksys, which is, many of you might have heard of it. It's a Wi-Fi router company that's been around. It was actually founded almost in the year I was born, and was one of the pioneers of networking and Wi-Fi. There's a South Park episode dedicated to saving the internet by turning the router on and off, and that's a Linksys router. So I went to join that business as CEO several years ago. It was there that I raised $160 million to take the company private. It was listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, owned by Foxconn, with a view to transform the business. This was during COVID. Transform the business into something that people can really access their work environment much more efficiently. But it was there that I kind of stumbled or happened upon projects like Helium, which I found to be fascinating. How you could build large-scale networks by individuals contributing to that, and it enabled things to scale much, much quicker. I wanted to try and do something with the Linksys assets, where we had, several million homes in America using our equipment. We could push firmware updates to those devices. They could all form nodes within the network, and that would have been, I think, a really, really cool thing to do. Alas, that wasn't going to be possible there. So me and some colleagues left Linksys to form what is now 375 AI. We initially started 375 AI with a mission of being a large, or the largest enterprise-grade deployer of DePIN, or at the time DY stuff, decentralized wireless stuff, and we indeed did that. We deployed millions of dollars of hardware, became very large miners of lots of different projects, Helium, XNet, etc., and built a mining business effectively from DePIN. But about a year and a half ago, we decided we wanted to swing bigger. We wanted to leverage the learnings that we'd come across by being such large deployers of other people's DePIN stuff and big admirers of many of these projects. Use those learnings to create something of our own and build our own network, and that's really where this edge intelligence network was born, and what we've been laser focused on for the past 18 months.
And then I guess on more of a practical basis, 375 AI, who's it for? What do you guys do? And what's the sort of like the vision for it?
So 375 AI is a network of sensors that capture information about the real world. The thesis being is that, and particularly given my background in this space, there is so much digital information, but there is a huge blind spot as it relates to what's going on in the real world. So whilst you can find out what people are clicking on, what people are searching for, what people are tweeting about, what people are buying on Amazon, you don't know what's happening on the corner of Piccadilly Circus and Trafalgar Square, or whatever it might be, or in Soho in New York. So we see that blind spot is something that's incredibly valuable to businesses. It's also incredibly valuable to LLMs that currently aren't able to or don't have purview into that data. So we are digitizing information in the real world. We're doing that through nodes that we've developed, hardware that we've developed, which is very advanced hardware. It's as DePIN hardware goes, it's some of the most expensive. The nodes, the 375 edge nodes cost $50,000. But there's good reason for that. It's because they contain a large amount of sensors and 6 very high definition specialized cameras, as well as having all of the GPU and a local LLM that's using computer vision technology to convert all of those inputs into digital information at the edge. So we're not just streaming large amounts of data and video up into the cloud and processing it later. It's being done on premises at every single site. In addition to that, we've launched a mobile app, which we have over 200,000 users of within our test net. And we like to see that as the kind of smallest sensor on the network. And over time, we will enable that community to contribute more and more from the mobile app using the functions that a phone has, which, it has many, many sensors. And as we monetize the data that we do with our customers, there'll be different things that mobiles can add to that data set. In terms of what the edge devices are capturing, it's primarily population and vehicular movement. So we're able to identify and count every type of car, whether it's a commercial vehicle, whether it's an Amazon truck, what speed it's going, how many occupants there are, any signifying marks, license plates, US Department of Transport numbers, and so on. And this information is then added to a data lake and stored in perpetuity. So we have both real-time insights into what's happening on that street at that time, but also we know what's been happening last week, last month, last year. And of course, the longer these data sets are developed, the more valuable that data set becomes, because trends tend to mean that you can predict the future the longer and longer that you capture them for.
My key question here, Harry, and it looks like the quality of data that you guys are outputting from this is unlike anything I've heard of, and far superior to anything. My question is, why is it decentralized? Like, why does it have to be a Web3 solution rather than the Web 2 solution?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So if it were just the 375 edge nodes that we were planning on deploying, I don't think it needed to be decentralized. We could have bought and deployed these devices ourselves. However, with the add into the fact that we've now got a community of over 200,000 people contributing data today passively, but in the future actively, using the DePIN model to provide the reward mechanic is a neat way and a clever way to provide those incentives. Additionally, we've developed and will sell and in Q2 a different form factor, which is similar in terms of purpose of 375 Edge. It's called 375 Street. This is a much smaller form factor. It will sell for around $1,500. It has 2 cameras instead of 6. It's much smaller, and this will be something that we'll look to deploy thousands of, and will be self-deployed by the community. So the benefit of DePIN is that people are finding great locations to place these devices. Often, DePIN enthusiasts are using multiple things in multiple places. So if someone's deploying a helium radio, maybe they also deploy a GeoNet sensor and a 375 AI street device. And that can, of course, increase their yield on a per location basis. So as we scale, to many thousands of hardware devices and millions of mobile users. That's really why the decentralization and the DePIN model was attractive to us.
So it's crucially the rewards mechanics, going to a more of a micro scale of an individual community member basis of being able to reward everyone in the best way possible.
I think it's that, and also, of course, the distribution of capex. So, one of the reasons why DePIN initiatives, for example, live in the cellular and networking space is that the carrier model, which is very much monopolized by a small number, particularly in the States, these businesses, the AT&Ts, T-Mobiles, Verizons of the world are so heavily indebted because they've invested tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions, into infrastructure, 5G infrastructure, and so on. And before you know it, 6G will come around, and they have to do the same cycle all over again. The DePIN model enables we, the people, to build out the network at our cost, which just spreads that capital expenditure across many, as opposed to concentrates it into one. And that's how it can hit kind of scale and turbo really, really quickly.
So a question going back to the data, I guess how much better is the quality of data that you guys output compared to what's already out there?
So as it relates to vehicular movement, I mean, the data already out there is very poor. It's often survey based, so it's based on a sample of a day or a week, either through temporary cameras being deployed in a location, and that's when it's the most sophisticated, down to someone standing on the side of the street with a clipboard and just counting. And then I guess somewhere in between is those rubber strips, which I'm sure everyone has seen at some point in their life, which just simply count the number of tires. So comparing that to what we're providing, which is deterministic information on the exact number of cars, the exact make and model, the exact speed, the exact number of occupants, the color, if it's been involved in an accident, if it has Amazon or UPS or FedEx written on the side, how frequently the same car might take that journey. And it's not just a sample of a week, it's forever. So it's really night and day in terms of the existing data sets that have existed. And these data sets are often powering massive decisions. That could be about where you're building a bridge, or how often you're going to maintain that road, or where gas stations or hospitals should be built. And therefore the gravity of the information is significant, and therefore, by having something that's far more accurate, or in fact exactly accurate, is revolutionary.
That was actually my next question, Harry. Is that the quality of data that comes out from your answer seems to be far better and higher quality compared to the existing processes that exist. And it seemed like a very basic question to ask next, but who actually uses this data, and how does it empower them to make better decision making? Because I know a lot of people that when they think about like better quality data processing, collecting, it's like, do we actually need that, or is it just a case of we're just doing it for the sake of doing it? But it sounds like, yeah, you're right. Like for someone like a government or a housing developer or people like that, where this data is so key to decision making, and they're spending millions, if not billions of dollars on these things, they need to have that.
Yes, absolutely. And the reception that we've had when talking to, data buyers has been, really encouraging. As I say, the data that they've been using up until now has ticked the box, but certainly not been very accurate, and certainly not changed the game. I'm pleased to say that one of the things that we learn as being a large deployer of other people's DePIN stuff, is we wanted to build a project that would have immediate demand out the gate, because one of the observations that we had is that Many of these DePIN networks would build huge amounts of supply, sell all this hardware, and then demand was lackluster or very, very slow to uptake. And our ambition is to build tens and soon to be hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue, and they're the kinds of businesses that I've personally built in the past in the data space. So I know it can be done. Now, that was built in a Web 2 model, but really there's no difference. The customers are the same, the data's similar, and the customers will be primarily from Web 2 and will be spending hard dollars, which will go into buy and burn. So we were determined to have demand side revenues immediately. To do that, we've concentrated the deployment of our devices and also determined the locations on behalf of our node operators or node owners. The reason for that is that it gives us densification of data in certain geographies. We've focused initially on Los Angeles, Miami, and New York, New Jersey. Those three places happen to be some of the busiest ports in America. Long Beach, for example, is the busiest port in America. So commercial and freight information is highly valuable. It can also be used as a very strong proxy to understand both business and economic performance. So that creates use cases that we've been able to already secure our first demand side paying customers to use that information. But in terms of who could buy this data, I mean, it really could be anyone. It could be anyone who's developing an app that could be for dating. It might, the advent of AI means that the more data you feed it, the more random correlations that you never envisaged could be possible can be discovered. And as I say, the blind spot of what's going on in the real world is huge. Let's not forget that more commerce happens offline than online, yet we have almost no information about what's going on offline or IRL or whatever we want to call it. And this is one of the component parts of solving that. And there's a number of other DePIN projects that are operating, in and around this real world physical AI sphere. And I think a number of them combined and businesses that combine those data sets, it's incredibly powerful stuff.
Just quickly on the AI piece. So the data collection comes in from the various sort of nodes and the community members. What role does the AI play in order? So if you think that you have the data coming in, you've got the AI which is sort of in the middle, and then you've got the sort of the end user, the end sort of consumer of the data. That could be a government, could be a business owner, could be sort of anyone, as you said. What role does the AI play, and how crucial is it?
So the AI is happening at the edge. So within each 375 edge node, there is tens of thousands of dollars of NVIDIA GPU. That enables us to run its own LLM locally, which means it can do all of the object detection that we need it. We can train it to understand and observe anything we want. It could be trained to look at birds or insects or clouds or whatever, planes in the sky. So we can train these edge nodes to really do whatever we want. It's that AI that is converting what would otherwise just be 6 high definition video streams into actionable information, and it's normalizing it into a digestible format. It means that instead of having terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of video streams, you've got files of metadata, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, it's efficient. It means that we're not pushing all that data around the internet. 2, we're not using centralized or cloud GPU to process it all. But three, and very importantly, is it respects privacy. We don't we don't see the video streams, so we can abide and as legislation changes, adapt to that landscape and be privacy sensitive and compliant. And it's AI at the edge that enables us to do that.
It's extremely cool, and as you said, without the AI and without the sort of decentralized elements of it, I mean, I think the AI definitely plays an extremely strong role, maybe stronger than the Web3 elements of it, but it wouldn't have been possible before without these sort of localized LLMs.
No, exactly. If we think about the number of cameras that there are everywhere, 99.9% of them are dumb as hell, and they go on.
It's because there's a human behind it. That's why, and the human has to oversee everything. So that's the reason behind it.
Yeah, I just envisage them all going into a room with a guy eating donuts and looking at 100 screens, and that that job ain't going to be around long.
Yeah, because it's not efficient. It costs quite a lot, and yeah, you're right. We localized LLM. It makes a lot more sense in that regard, and it's 24-hour. There's just so many sort of benefits to this. I want to ask you in terms of, because you mentioned how you got your first paying customer. Are there any? So maybe talk about that, or another example. But are there any live deployments or pilot programs specifically on 375 AI currently that you can talk about?
So, I mean, we sold the first 50 edge nodes in Q3, pre-sold them in Q3 last year, and in Q4 and Q1 we've been deploying those nodes. So they're either deployed or in the process of being deployed. The ones that are deployed are already capturing over 1 million unique cars per day, and we anticipate that rising, to multiple million of unique cars per day. To put that in perspective, there's approximately 85 million unique cars on the road in the United States in a given day. There's about 250 million registered cars or vehicles, but only approximately 85 million unique are driven on any given day. So soon we'll be able to see 10% of the entire US transportation movement, at least once per day. And we believe that to be a huge milestone that can be achieved, relatively quickly. And we will continue to grow from there. One of the ways that we've been able to achieve this is because of a partnership we struck quite early on, which is incredibly important to us, which is a 10-year exclusive relationship with Outfront Media, which is one of the largest billboard companies in the world, second largest in America. They have 50,000 big signs on the side of the busiest highways in the country, and they reach 7 out of 10 Americans every week in terms of eyeballs. So we have a partnership with them, which enables us to deploy these devices on their infrastructure, which gives us very, very unique and high value locations that you would otherwise, you don't have homes in the middle of intersections. So a deployer isn't going to be able to just put up one of these devices. These are in extremely rare and unusual locations, but they reach 10 lanes of traffic going both ways. And therefore that's how we've been able to create the scale of data with a relatively small number of sites immediately. And we will do a further sale of edge nodes this year to continue on that expansion.
You did mention on our space that you guys already sold over $1 million worth of infrastructure. Who does that infrastructure actually go to? Like who is buying that up? Obviously, you mentioned the billboard company, but are there any sort of other ones?
So yeah, the billboard company is the place that we're hosting the devices. So we limited the community to a maximum of buying 2. So it's quite distributed. I'd say 50% of the node buyers were in Asia, maybe 20% in Europe and 30% in America. So whilst all the nodes are physically deployed in Los Angeles, New York, and Miami, the owners and therefore the token rewards go to community members from all over the world. They've tended to be, DePIN enthusiasts, Web3 enthusiasts, but over time, we certainly anticipate businesses, commercial deployers of DePIN stuff, much like we were when we started out, to spring up, and they are. People are taking this. People are building businesses out of DePIN now by deploying, not by becoming a DePIN project themselves, but by becoming a mega deployer, and the yields that they can generate from these devices is very high because of the fidelity and quality and uniqueness of the data it captures.
Yeah, 100%. We had XYO on the podcast fairly recently, and they mentioned how, from their community, a lot of people that end up actually retiring from, just deploying their infrastructure, which is insane. So yeah, those things can definitely happen, and people do set up businesses as a result of that. What are the sort of technical challenges at the moment when it comes to, operating on the edge, and any other sort of technical challenges that you guys are sort of navigating?
Training the models is a constantly moving target. Fortunately, we have a lot of information for it to kind of self-learn and train upon. So that's an ever-moving target, but of course, the pace of change and the advancement in AI is like nothing really we've ever seen before, and therefore, what's not possible today is feasibly possible tomorrow, whereas before you had to think about cycles and Moore's law and things like that, and all of that's out the window. So that's certainly something that I guess we keep in mind. We've been overwhelmed and thrilled by the traction that we've received on our testnet, with over 200,000 users downloading and registering in our mobile app and contributing billions of data points to the network. So that's that was something that we didn't kind of even our wildest dreams think that would be quite the adoption that we received, and that's before our TGE, and we're now prepping for our TGE, which we anticipate happening will happen this quarter, and that's really what we've got heads down on doing.
Yeah, it's a good point, because so AI is exponentially getting better, as we know, and with you guys, as time goes on, the distribution will obviously increase also. Where do you see this sort of going? Where do you see sort of new use cases emerging that possibly you guys you're not operating in right now because of these technological advancements as well as increased distribution?
One of the things that we kind of planned from the beginning is that, what we've observed, again, as being a deployer, is that many DePIN projects do one thing very kind of specifically. And as a deployer, I don't need 10 Raspberry Pis or 10 little computers sitting on my rooftop with 10 specific sensors plugged into each one of the 10 computers. So what our hope is, and what we've been discussing with other DePIN projects to do, is try and consolidate some of that to create efficiency. So using, one supercomputer, which is what's required for our project to exist, but is way overkill for almost every other project because they don't require that computation, but enabling their sensors to piggyback into it. So that's certainly something that I would like to see the DePIN ecosystem kind of rally around, is how to leverage one another's common infrastructure and common components to make it easier for deployers, make it more capital efficient, because again, back to that analogy of 10 Raspberry Pis to do 10 things, you could have one. Or if you needed more than one, you can have a supercomputer that can do, you name it. So that's certainly something that I'd like to see, and that will enable, different data sets to be potentially integrated into the same platform, whether that's our freight and logistics information marrying up with Wingbit's aviation data or maritime data, which is where cargo and freight come from. That's just one example, and there would be dozens more.
Yeah, and probably some that you've never even thought about as well. And that's the beauty of this.
Of course, and that's really where we see our data. We don't anticipate envisaging all the use cases. We anticipate making the data available for people to innovate in people. Amazon AWS built a place for people to host their websites and run their servers. They didn't design Etsy or Spotify or all the applications that sit on top of it. In the same way, we won't do the same, but our focus is on data. So if you go to cloud storage for one purpose, you would come to us for intelligence and information.
Yeah, really, really like that. That's very impressive. Harry, we're going to wrap up the podcast there, getting to the end of it. But a question I love to ask my guests before we wrap up is, what is your favorite use case of DePIN or Edge AI outside of what you guys are immediately doing?
Yeah, outside of what we're doing, because what we're doing, I think, is fascinating and will change the world. But certainly, I mean, we started out in DY, so I have a soft spot for DY, the Heliums, the XNets. There's a huge industry there that's ripe for disruption. The decentralization of CapEx, like we talked about earlier, is critical within that space. The businesses that they're helping reduce their CapEx by operationalizing their costs through these networks, they're in trouble. They're more indebted than they've ever been before. Debt costs more than it's ever done, or at least in recent memory. And therefore, there's just such an obvious win-win. Outside of that, I think some of the geospatial stuff. So I love what Mike and GeoDNet are doing for robotics and again, like having information to be able to operate within the real world. I think that will also require like data around what's happening, as well as geo positioning, because whilst GeoDNet can tell you to a centimeter exactly where a thing is, that thing doesn't necessarily know what's exactly around it, or if it does, it's only within its purview from its sensors locally. So all these things melded together create for a pretty fascinating future of, we are very, we're not far from flying cars and robotic everything. And these types of pieces of information pieced together in the right way get us closer to that reality quicker.
Completely agree. Yeah, lovely answer. Harry, we're going to wrap up the podcast there. Very last question. I'm sure people are very keen to follow you guys and also try to get involved themselves and be part of the community. How can people stay in touch with you and 375 AI?
Sure. I'm on X, Harry_Dewhirst. 375 is 375.ai is our website, and 375AI_ on X. You can also check us out on Discord. And yeah, we've got a very vibrant community. I'm very grateful for our community and would love you to be part of it.
Fantastic. Harry, been a pleasure having you on, and thank you so much. I'm sure we'll speak very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to today's discussion, brought to you by the embedded blockchain Minima, the only layer 1 blockchain lean and compact enough to run a full node on chip or on any mobile IoT device. If you're new to DePIN, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter to stay up to date. Thank you so much for watching again, and we'll catch you in the next episode.